All right, welcome. We're going to be doing some fun stuff with Helm today. I think I've got all the videos set up right, though I don't know how to use this software at all, which is funny. So we're going to be playing around with Helm, looking at how we can use it to deploy software, deploy our own custom charts, and we'll look at how CodeFresh actually works with it, as well as some terminal command line stuff. So hopefully everybody is seeing this and it's working properly. I'm going to go ahead and switch the view here so that you can see my screen. Oh, let me zoom in once or twice more here. Well, let's actually keep it right here. All right, so if you're not familiar with Helm, basically Helm gives you a way of defining your application, giving it all of the components that go into your switch my view here. Sorry. All right. So basically, what Helm does is it gives you a way of defining your application with all of its components, images, different services, and then you can deploy it and run it on top of Kubernetes. So to give you an example here, really quick. I've got a couple of clusters set up. I've got a few different Helm charts set up here. Let's look for a moment at, I'm going to switch to this cluster. So you can see that I've deployed WordPress onto this cluster. Now if I wanted to deploy another chart, and here I'm going to be using CodeFresh to do this because a lot of this functionality is new inside of CodeFresh. But I will show you kind of some of the terminal kind of command line ways of interacting with this. I'm going to go over and look at just in general Helm charts. I'm just looking at kubeapps is exposed inside of CodeFresh. I've got a lot of options for all the different applications I can deploy. And if you think about it, each of these services is a set of services. So WordPress was a good example because it has a database. I think it's Maria database, and then it has, of course, the PHP application. Let's see, I haven't installed this one. This one's called Minecraft, so let's try installing that. It's probably a Minecraft server or something. I'm going to select my cluster that I have added. This is a cluster I have on Google Kubernetes Engine, formerly known as Google Container Engine, or we abbreviate it to GKE. And I'm going to deploy it just in my default namespace. I'm going to go ahead and install that. Now what this is going to do is it's going to grab all the information about this application. It's basically like a package manager. So you could think about if you've used Brew, if you're an OS 10 user, if you've used apt-get, if you're of a Debian persuasion. That's basically what it is. It's for cloud applications. So here we can see it's actually doing all my Helm install stuff. Looks like this Helm chart requires me to read a EULA, so that's good to know. What I've already deployed, I showed you that I had already deployed this WordPress one, and I've got this Minecraft one deployed here now. Now, if I want to see what's going on with this, I can actually go right over to Kubernetes, and I'm going to switch my view so I'm looking at the same cluster. And we can see, here's my Minecraft thing, and then here are my two WordPress services that I have deployed on this namespace. Now, this is because if I just wanted to install other people's charts, but that's actually not the purpose of today's event. What I'm going to look at instead is how I deploy my own Helm charts. So I'm going to switch clusters here. Now you can see I've got a bunch of stuff deployed already. You can see these are all my different Kubernetes services. I can see their endpoints and open up the application. These are just a demo application I have running. I'm going to close that. But what if I wanted to develop and deploy my own custom Helm charts? How would I do that? So I'm going to add another... No, I don't need another filter. So what I've done here is I've actually set up a couple of pipelines that are going to do the heavy lifting for me. Now, in my Helm releases, you're going to see that I have, let me switch over to this cluster. you're going to see that I have this this application called Demo Chat Prod. Now, if I open up this, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I'll go back here. Now, if I expand this, you're going to see that I actually installed it earlier today, and then I upgraded it. I superseded it twice, and so now I'm on the third revision. Make sure I'm in the right screen here. I got a little lost. Make sure I'm looking at the right revision. So I've updated it 3 times now, or twice. I guess I installed it once, I updated it once, and then I updated it another time. Now, at any point, if there were an issue with this, I could actually just go ahead and issue a rollback, and it would update and install the application for me, basically the last revision of whatever that chart was at that time. So if you're still kind of catching on to this Helm charts concept, the idea here is I can define my application, I can deploy it, basically like a package manager, and then every time I issue an update, Helm is actually going to keep track of it, and then I can issue a rollback to any previous revision of my application. Now, what is my application here? Well, it's actually made up of 2 images. So if we look at this demo chat prod one, and I go over to what's actually running inside of Kubernetes, that's these 2 services. So one of them is demo chat dash prod, and one is demo chat dash prod dash mango. This is the mango. That SNL character. Mongo. It's my Mongo database. And I can open up these endpoints and I can see that it's running. That's awesome. Now, this is this service that's running for this application. So it's got these 2 different versions. I can actually revert that to previous versions, but by just issuing that rollback. But let's go over and do something a little bit more interesting. I've got this namespace that I spun up here. I'm sorry, this chart that I spun up here called Helm Value Ref. I'm gonna go ahead and clear this out. What I'm gonna do here is show you kind of an interesting kind of development flow. And just for the sake of fun, I'm gonna delete these. Delete namespace. Okay. All right. So what we're gonna do is I've got my application, and let's say that I wanted to test a new branch. Well, what I've done is I've actually set up a pipeline that will dynamically create a new namespace just for that branch, and it will deploy the revision of that application that exists for that branch. So that sounds confusing. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to jump over to my my kind of CI/CD portion of CodeFresh, and I'm going to open up my demo chat. And you can see I've created 2 pipelines here. One of them is called demo chat, and this would actually be kind of, maybe I should rename it dev or something like that. And then I have one that's called prod. Now prod doesn't build any images; it only deploys an image that I've specified, and it's specific to whatever branch that I'm calling. This demo chat one, however, is a little bit more interesting. You can see I've got some environmental variables here set, and we can go back through those in a minute. This one, so first it will build my Docker image, and it will tag it with whatever the branch name is that I'm building. Now this is a pipeline that's set up to run on every branch for this repo. And once it does, it will try to create a namespace and add a pull secret to it. Now if the namespace already exists, this step will fail, but it's fine. It will just move on down the pipeline, no big deal. And then finally, it will actually release the Helm chart that I have just added to with this new image onto this new namespace. So we're going to run this, but to show you beforehand, we just cleared it out, but just to show you one more time, right now these are all of our namespaces, and I had a branch I was working on for some Helm, changing some Helm values. So I'm going to deploy that one. So I'm going to go back to my pipeline here, And I'm going to go ahead and have this one execute. And I'm going to set it to run in this Helm value ref branch. And so what it will do is it will create a new namespace called Helm value ref, and it will deploy a copy of my application stack with those two servers on it that I can then use for integration testing. Maybe I wanted to throw Selenium against it, or maybe, which I could add as a step in the pipeline, or maybe I want to share this environment with some people on my team and let them see what it is. This is pretty exciting, cool ways of interacting. Now, in this kind of demo that I set up today, I'm using the same cluster for my prod. It's not actual prod, as I'm using for my my on-demand instances here, these dev and test environments. Obviously, you would probably never want to do that. You'd want to set up not only a separate cluster. In this case, these clusters are running in Google Container Engine, Kubernetes Engine, sorry, rebranded. You would want to run them in actually separate projects, probably, in order to control the permissions and stuff. And so CodeFresh would follow kind of the same permission schemes. But for the sake of this demo, I'm gonna stick with this. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell it to build. I should have told it to build so that I could have talked that whole time while it was building. So what this is gonna do is it's gonna basically, CodeFresh is kind of made up of a couple components. One is CI/CD stuff, the continuous integration, the build stuff. Another is the registry that's actually built in, the image management, which we kind of talked about our last video, which there should be a link in the doodly-doo after this. And then the third component is actually sort of environments for a lot of different tasks. What this is actually going to do is it's going to create a one-off environment, and each step in this pipeline is going to run in its own container, which means I can give it its own image and its own environment to run in. So I could have a pipeline that has like Ruby running on Ubuntu, and then it could have Python running on Alpine, and then you get the idea. And then I could have a Java environment, right? So this is we can see here that this new version didn't exist before. And you can see that the command that is actually that it's executing here is a Helm upgrade command. Now, if it doesn't exist and you run a Helm upgrade command, it will actually automatically create it. But what it won't do necessarily, and one of the kind of nice little things about this is if you've never used Helm before, this image will actually automatically set up Helm for you. So a lot of automation has gone into this, kind of streamline the workflow. And you can see here that it's actually I'm pointing at my screen, you can't see. You can see here that it's actually created this namespace for me after it built the Docker image, and here it's been deployed, and here we can see that it is actually reporting that it is running. Now I set a flag in this pipeline that basically said wait for stuff to be ready, which is why this took a little bit longer. Otherwise it would have just deployed it and moved on, but I wanted it to wait and verify that everything was running. So now if I go back to Kubernetes, I will see this new namespace has been created called Helm value ref, and I can see I have this new service set of my application, and I can actually open up a copy of my application here, and here it is, it's running, it's got an IP address and everything. And I can go over to my Helm releases, and I can actually see that a new entry is here. See, there's no revision history on this because this is brand new for this specific image. Now, I have here, so let's say that I went through and I tested this and I said, you know what, this is good, this is excellent, I want to go ahead and push this into prod. Well, how would I do that? The way that I've set it up, and this is pretty easy, is, and again, you'd probably want to have separate projects and separate Kubernetes clusters and all that jazz, but I'm going to go over to my pipelines here, and I've set up a pipeline just for prod. Now, the cool thing about this pipeline, if we go down and look at it, is that, I actually do have it building. Whoops, meant to take that out before we did this demo. I actually have, and I don't need any of this stuff. I remember I was testing some stuff before this video and I was doing some tricky stuff. So basically what I want this pipeline to do is the only thing I want it to do is I only want it to release. and then I'm going to specify what I want it to release. Now, how does it know what I want to release? Well, in my environmental variables here, I tell it what image tag I want it to release. I have it specified here in this custom image tag environmental variable. And I'll show you where there's plugins are in a second. I guess I should have started with that. Actually, let's back up and do that because it'll be just kind of confusing if you know what I'm talking about. What we've built here is I'm using an image to deploy that's called CodeFresh plugin Helm. So if I just search CodeFresh plugin Helm, here it is. This is an image that we've built that you're welcome to take and use. It's designed as a plugin for CodeFresh, but it's technically just a Docker image, so you could take it and use it on your own computer just manually if you wanted. I don't think it has any specific CodeFresh API things in it. I think it's just a generic image. So basically, what this does is you pass a couple of environmental variables, and then this image has all the tooling that it needs to create and install Helm, to manipulate namespaces, to install new charts that you've created, custom charts. And basically operate it all. So what I've done in my pipeline here is I have set up all of these environmental variables that have a bunch of information that I want to pass on. So for instance, one of those is kube context. So this is which Kubernetes cluster do I want this to go onto? Well, I want it to go on this cluster. What release do I want to be working with? I want to work with this prod release. What's the chart name? This is actually a reference to inside of my GitHub repo, which chart is it actually using, and you can change this on the fly. And then I did, and I actually see a lot of people that do stuff differently than this, but this I thought would be fun for a demo. I set up a custom image tag. So what this is telling it which image do I want to actually release and deploy, and I've set it to be the branch name. Now what this means is that I can specify what branch I want to release, and it will take the image for that branch and release it on this pipeline. So let me show you what that looks like. And I just tweaked all this YAML, so hopefully it'll work. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to tell it to build. Now, remember, the pipeline here, demo chat prod, is going to release to my production. And whatever branch I specify is the one that it's going to release. So here I'm going to tell it that I want to release that Helm value ref branch. Now this isn't going to build a new image, right? I don't really want to rebuild the image. I just tested the image. I certified that image was working, and now I can deploy it, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and tell this to build, and all it's going to do is it's going to execute that pipeline and deploy it deploy my Helm chart with that image that I specified, this new image. So this one's going to run a little bit faster because it doesn't actually even have to build the image. It is going to copy the repo because it wants to grab the Helm chart out of it, and then it's going to deploy the Helm chart. So Helm's running, good, and awesome. It's executed that upgrade command. And here we can see that the new version is creating, and the old pods are being terminated. And now if I go back and look in my services, and I want to look at my production version here, right? We can see this is rolling out. So this might I don't know if I have it set for a rolling update. I can't remember. I must not have, because it was still creating the container after it was deleting those other ones. So this one will probably take a few seconds to come back up as it deploys that new image. Now the nice thing about this is there are kind of a couple little value adds for you dear user. One is we have this great Helm image that you can, here the status is green, so this should be working. Here it is. All right, cool. Now, if let's say that there was a problem with this and I needed to get rid of it, I could actually go over to my releases. Remember, I just upgraded prod, and we can see that I had a previous version available that was working. I'm going to issue a rollback, and this will actually execute a rollback pipeline here. So here it goes. It's gonna grab an environment to run this thing in, and then it's going to execute the rollback, and it says the rollback was a success. Now, if I go back and look, we're going to see that this is in process here because the pods are being updated. And if we look on yeah, it's already back. And if I open this up, it will now be reverted back to the old version. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome because you can imagine. So this is only a 2-service application, which is like you could imagine that if you had like a 50-service application, you could issue a rollback, and it wouldn't just be one image that was changed, it would be a bunch of images, and that really makes life a lot easier from a management perspective of dealing with releases. Now, we actually use this internally. CodeFresh itself is actually built on top of Kubernetes, and it's specifically built as a Helm chart, and we do that for a couple of reasons. One, it makes just managing our SaaS offering a lot easier. But two, we actually offer the Helm chart for people to download and install on their own infrastructure. If you want to run CodeFresh yourself, you can. That's the kind of stuff that our enterprise customers are doing. But yeah, let's see. I think I showed you everything that I wanted to show you. We looked at the cluster. We saw it was running. We issued a release. We basically spun up a namespace dynamically, and then we executed this whole pipeline. Now, last week I showed you how to see what images were running. And we went through that whole process, and so it wasn't last week; it was a few weeks ago. So check that out, and I'll share it in the video description. And I think that's it. So happy helming. Actually, we didn't spend a lot of time in the command line here. I showed you a couple of commands. Now, if you let's actually take a second. We'll see if I can remember how to do it. So let's say that I was looking at these Helm releases. And for some reason, I didn't want to use kind of this nice interface to execute these revisions. How would I do that? Well, I would first have to figure out, let's see, I would use Helm list to figure out which stuff I had, which deployments, which applications, which charts I had deployed. And then I would need to do, oh man, I totally just spaced on the commands here. I can issue a rollback. So let's see, I could do, let's get rid of this. Helm rollback, and then I would need to tell it which revision I wanted to roll back to. Well, how do I figure out what revisions there are? I have to issue another command with history. So I have to do Helm. So before I want to history and then the name of my application, this will show me the previous revision history, and it gives me my description. So one is a rollback to 3. So like if I wanted to undo that, I would basically roll back to 4, right? So let's do that. Let's do Helm revert. Wait, was it revert? No, rollback. Rollback this. And we're going to go back to 4, and I'm going to issue the dry run on this so that it will test it for me. So it tested the rollback. It looks like it'll work, so now I can execute it. That's all stuff that's going to happen automatically if I issue a rollback on CodeFresh. So here, now I've issued that rollback. It looks like it was a success. And now if I go to my Helm history, I should see revision 6 now. And I do see revision 6, and if I go back in here and I refresh this, This will show me that I am now on revision 6. Here we go. So this is if you do something on command line, it will also be reflected in the GUI. If you do something, or people say GUI, if you do it in the GUI here, it'll also be reflected in the command line. There are a lot of nice things about that, but I think that if you're working with Helm, there's kind of like all this stuff you have to accomplish, right? You've got to build images, you've got to store those images somewhere, you have to validate those images, you have to run some sort of testing, and then you have to deploy the images within the context of their chart. And doing that all, I mean, it's possible to do all that stuff, from the command line and then kind of engineer your own thing. But kind of the thing about CodeFresh here is that that's what we do. That's how we build. That's how we build CodeFresh, right? And so we have optimized this flow, like we dog food super heavily, right? And we have optimized this flow specifically for teams that are doing those functions. Now, one of the kind of secret sauce things that I'll share with you is that if you have a Kubernetes cluster that has, let me switch my view here. If you have a Kubernetes cluster and you have tons of Helm releases, so let's say, for instance, in our production instance, last time I looked at it, it had hundreds of revisions. If you try to execute a Helm history on one of those services, it can actually take like 10 minutes to load everything that's been done. So one of the things that we have done in our UX is we actually read that history kind of directly, and then we cache it. And so anytime you look at it in CodeFresh, it's actually much faster to get that whole history and then go and find what you want. So I think that we're going to add a lot more functionality here around helping you see which images were in which revision, and so you can see what changes went through, and we'll kind of streamline that stuff. But we'll save that for another day. I hope this was super helpful. We got to play around with Helm a little bit. Super fun. Kubernetes is super fun. And with that, I know you're not supposed to be specific with videos because they're timeless and people can look at it. But happy holidays, happy New Year, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, all the happy things. Have a great one, and you probably won't see me until the new year. So have a good one. Bye.